Well, good afternoon. I'm Rick Dancer. Welcome to The Buck Stops Here. Our show is sponsored by Scott and Lisa Weld with Buck Sanitary Service because they honestly believe that conversation in Oregon is the way that we, the people, get our voice back. And so when I find a story that I find that it just fits that buck stops here, because the whole idea is it really does stop with us. For years, we've said, we've let the legislature decide, let the governor decide. It's really our state. And we have an issue coming up that's very concerning to small rural Oregon communities. And actually, it should concern the rest of us as well. And that's what we're going to find out. There's two minimum security prisons in Oregon that are that's slated to possibly be shut down. One in Lakeview, and the other Shutter Creek, just outside of North Bend down by Coos Bay. So if this happens, what does that mean? Well, that's why we get the experts. So this is Jessica from the Lake County Chamber. And I'm going back to my own roots, the Lake County Chamber. And then we have Terry. Terry, what is your last name?
Lowry.
And Lowry, he works at the Shutter Creek Correctional Institution. So thank you guys for both being here and doing this. And it was last minute. I called Jessica up like half an hour ago. I'm like, hey, you want to go live? I've got a show for you. And Terry and I have been talking and getting some information down. So again, I want to remind you guys, this is sponsored by Buck Sanitary Service. You can ask questions, but we're going to let these two talk a lot. So I may not get to them because it's, it's hard to do two things at once. So Terry, why don't we start with you with Shutter Creek? Tell me. Okay. How many people laid off if this happens? Big picture.
Well, roughly, with all the staff that we have up there, outside of security and non-security, we're looking roughly about 100, 110 people. But it's not just with our security staff and our other staff that are up there that's going to be affected. It's the families that are out in the community that, we have, most of us are all married. So, we have our wives or our loved ones that are out there that are working also. So we're looking roughly out of this whole community, 200 plus jobs that will be leaving.
And these are well-paying jobs. These are family wage jobs.
Correct. The ones out in the community. I mean, we've got our families that work in the hospitals, the medical clinics, the store, grocery stores, the gas stations. They own their own businesses. And it's going to, it's not just taking out, the money that we at Shutter Creek make. It's taking out money that is generated throughout the communities from our families too.
So Jessica, in Lake County, is this your largest employer?
So Warner Creek Correctional Facility is not our largest employer. We do have the Forest Service and BLM here. That are larger employers than our prison, but we're in the same boat as Shutter Creek. We have about 108 to 110 employees that work at Warner Creek Correctional Facility. They're also spouses and also other suppliers that work in town that also contribute to and are benefited from Warner Creek Correctional Facility. So we are looking at losing annually from the Oregon Employment Department for Lakeview just under $13 million in revenue a year if we lose our prison.
$13 million?
Also, out of those 108 employees that work at the prison, 64 of them own homes in our community, in our county, and 54 rent. We also have 82 children in the Lakeview school system and 9 children in Paisley, which is 10% of their entire student body. So it'll not only affect our home, our property with home ownerships, because most likely a lot of these people will transfer out. So they'll transfer to another prison because these are higher paying jobs. They come with benefits. So we'll lose those children in our school system, which will in turn then we could have a cut of up to 5 educators out of our school system in Lakeview, and probably at least one in Paisley with smaller class sizes. It'll also affect, it's already affecting some of our small businesses who were planning on expanding because their main purchasers and patrons are prison workers that make above the average living wage. So they're not able to expand currently to make their businesses, more viable. What we're mainly concerned about losing our prisons in both Warner Creek and Shutter Creek is that we're rural communities. So the number doesn't seem huge when you're living in an urban community, 108, 110 employees. But to us, every one of those jobs is enormous to our community. And going through the pandemic, we wouldn't be able to have a foothold, especially Shutter Creek is kind of ahead of us on the docket to possibly close. We are in the next biennium, but it could mean as early for us as July 1st of 2021. So we won't have any recovery time from COVID and our businesses being shut down to get a foothold and get some balance back to get our community thriving economically again.
So Terry, talk to me. You and I were talking earlier, and you are an employee there, and that you will be offered jobs in other places, which means you could be coming to another town and putting another family out of work. But you're also leaving Coos County. Kind of talk with folks a little bit about that so they understand how that works.
Well, the way the process will work is along with Warner Creek, they're in the eastern part of the state. We're in the western part of the state, and so we're going to get offered jobs in the western part. They're going to get offered jobs down in the eastern part of the state. So for the higher seniority officers that are working up at Shutter Creek, they'll get the first options to go to a transfer to an institution. And say they pick Coffee Creek, which right now has several openings for somebody to move to. So say there's 15 of us employees that have higher seniority. We'll get offered a spot at Coffee Creek, and we either have a choice to take that offer or be put on layoff. Then we come into the ones that have, say, Coffee Creek, Sandy Am, which is in Salem, Coffee Creek's in Wilsonville, OSCI, EOCI, areas like that. So the ones that have the lower seniority that still have what's called a bump time, they will go in and be able to bump somebody out of their job. So if you got an officer that's working at, say, Coffee Creek, and he's only got a year and a half in, and they don't care whether, he's a brand new employee, he's got a family at home, he's got 4 kids at home he's trying to struggle and help feed. An officer up here, because they've got to do the same thing to save their family, has to bump some guy out of his job. So Terry, it's not just affecting, Coos County or Lake County. It's affecting, Warner. It's affecting Portland area. It's affecting Salem area. It's affecting every prison within our state when these prisons get shut down.
So people are asking on here, what happens to the prisoners? Where do the prisoners go? Home?
No, they will actually get shipped out to other institutions across the state. They'll probably, the way I've seen transport normally work is they'll take and they'll put like anywhere from 10 to 15 different people onto a transport bus a week, and they'll transfer them out and disperse them out across the other institutions inside their classification group that they're in. And say we've got right now roughly about 200 plus inmates right now. They'll do a little bit at a time till all of those ones are gone. And then they'll start, I'm assuming, I don't know for sure because I've never went through a shutdown, that they'll have a ghost staff there just to close the institution down. So
I know some people feel like these are minimum security folks, and Lane County, like for Shutter Creek anywhere, our inmates, I don't know what the new term is, but I'm just going to use inmates because that's what I know. They're sent there to kind of like on a transition to get out. And the important thing you were saying, Terry, earlier is that they're close to home so that they can get visitors, because visitors visiting them is part of their rehabilitation. And if you all of a sudden shutting those and putting them way far away, that doesn't get them the best treatment that they need.
Correct. And, whenever I started this this career, I started in December 5th of 2005. I've been doing this for 15 years now. And one of the things that we learned in the academy is our mission statement. And our mission statement, basically it states that, we are promoting public safety by holding them accountable for their actions and reducing the risk of future criminal behavior. So part of the thing about reducing that risk out there is getting them instated with their families and building that bond that they need when they get out. And if we take away a visiting area, because families don't have enough money to do the traveling, especially now because our governor is limiting the access to where we can go, that really puts a strain on family reunification.
Terry, go ahead. I got another question I'm going to ask you. Somebody's asking it here, but I want to get to Jessica really quickly too for something. What I'm going to ask you, just to warn you, somebody's asking about the loss of the federal land that the prison is on there. Okay,
that is correct.
Get to you in just a second. Remind me, Jessica, in town, like on a scale of 1 to 10. I mean, I have this kind of love affair with Lakeview. How concerned are people there?
Oh, extremely concerned. Extremely concerned. It's going to affect every small business. It's going to affect our schools. It's going to affect the Forest Service. They have contracts with the prison, but also through, we had Representative Werner Reschke visit yesterday, and what is also on the docket is closing around 11 prisons. We would just be the first 2. So you also run the risk of when you go to transfer to another prison, that prison may also be shut down at some point. So, it's creating a ton of new problems for employees wanting to transfer out, for, people wanting and needing to move and take care of their families. We don't have any, that hasn't been, but we've heard that is part of the bigger plan on reform to change a lot of, where and when people do get convicted and put into prisons, that it's a part of a huge other plan. So that's also a really big concern, is when you transfer out, if you end up in a prison that next year is also going to be shut down. So you're displacing all of these employees that are working and have worked in places for, prisons for years, have retirements, have their families, stabilized in a community that they enjoy, that they love. These prison employees are Little League coaches. They're, their spouses are teachers. They're Pop Warner. They're volunteers at our fairs and roundups. They're part of our community, and displacing them and moving them and transferring them just to be transferred again, most likely, is a huge detriment to our communities. And it should never start in rural areas. If this is the plan to close 11 of the 14 prisons, it should start in urban, where they can more easily absorb. Here in rural, Werner compared it to if University of Oregon were to be shut down, or Oregon State University were to be shut down, what that would do to those communities. It's of that magnitude that it would do to us.
So does this feel like, as a rural Oregonian, just one more slap in the face where it you know what I mean? Because you guys you're like 45 minutes to an hour from any bigger place. And if I've been there, so I know Warner Creek is a huge employer in that area. Everybody somehow is connected to that, from the restaurant to the grocery store to the car lot. That is an economic engine that all of a sudden it's being, possibly yanked out. And like you said, Portland or Eugene might be able to handle that a little differently if we had a prison here. But you guys, for you, it's your bread and butter.
And there are 4 prisons in Salem. So, Salem could more easily absorb one of their smaller prisons being shut down before Shutter Creek or Werner Creek could. So, I don't think that the governor is doing any kind of, we'll all show rural. I think, though, that it needs to be, at least if that's the bigger plan, to shut down as many as 11 prisons, that it needs to start in our bigger urban areas and then come down to rural, so that we can have a chance at least to balance our economy, and to get things back up from COVID and the shutdowns that we've already had. It does feel like a slap in the face to us, but we will find a way to persevere, and I'm sure Coos Bay, North Bend will as well. But losing those members of our community is going to hurt us so much more deeply than the years to come trying to economically get back to a thriving place.
And
losing those people are just, it's going to hurt our community the most.
And for people who haven't been there, Warner Creek is a state-of-the-art facility that uses geothermal energy under the floors to heat the place. This is a valuable building, a valuable asset, probably better than the crappy ones I've been in Salem. Not as a client, but as a reporter. I just want to make that clear. But you know what I mean? We have a state-of-the-art facility, and Shutter Creek, you guys have done tons of work. And what I didn't know, Terry, was that if this is owned by the federal government, you guys pay $1 a year for it. If that goes away, all that work that your communities put into that, all that money just gets dumped back to the federal government, and the state says, bye-bye.
And we can never get it back. And, that's the thing is, we've done probably more than $2 million worth of upgrades in the last 2 years to bring us up to federal codes. We've redid our camera system. It took them a year to do the camera system. We've redid our fire suppression system just recently. And we've put new roofs on buildings. We've rebuilt buildings, added new rooms. And there's just a number of things that we have done. Rebuilt our entire kitchen, bringing us up to code where they wanted us. And I just can't see throwing all that money back into the federal government whenever our state is the one that paid for that. Our taxpayers paid for all that.
So real quick too, I want to talk about, I have a lot of friends who have successfully been released from Shutter Creek, and they have told me that is part of the reason that they're successful, because of the great programs. And Jessica, I think you can talk to the programs in Warner Creek probably a little bit too. But tell them some of the dog training program. I mean, some of the things that we're losing that people might just kind of go, but they are amazing programs.
They are, and it gives them a lot of job experience when they get out to fall back on. Some of our stuff that we have, and I'm going to look here on my paperwork because I don't want to miss any of them, but we have parenting classes that get them reunited with their families and teach them what they've been doing wrong, to try to work with their kids and their families in a more productive way. We have GED classes. Everyone that comes through there will have their GED when they get out of prison. They can get college courses where they can learn other different educations and try to get into a different job when they get out. We have gardening, we have a kitchen, we have electrical, we have welding, we have plumbing, we have education, we have landscaping, small engine repair, carpentry, and what's called a JLAD dog program. This program came to us 2 years ago. It's called Joys of Living Assistance Dogs. And what they do is our inmates, they're called AICs now, they go through and they train these dogs. And they work with them day in and day out. They live with these dogs. They're in kennels right next to their bunks with them. They get up, they work with them every single day. And they go through and they teach them life skills on how to work with patients with PTSD or with just physical handicaps. And in the 2 years that we've had this program, we've placed 12 dogs with families. And they do amazing work. And if you've ever watched these guys working with them dogs, it's crazy. You can put a dog in that mix and you can take the hardest person in the world and they're back to their kids. I mean, it's
So
just it's really, really cool.
And that's really what Warner Creek and Shutter Creek are both about, is restoration, restoring lives for people who've done their time, and you're getting them to be out to be successful people in the community. And I think when I talked to the warden at Warner Creek, he said, Rick, I think part of the reason it works so well here in Lakeview is because we are so isolated. You're bringing people out to a place where they can get themselves back together again. And we're not taking that into consideration. Is geography sometimes is, to get away from the I-5 corridor or life and into a place where people, where you're around people like you guys, that's really beneficial to these people. And that's really what this is supposed to be about, I think. Jessica, what is, besides the geothermal there at Warner Creek, which is such a phenomenal thing, but are the inmates ever in the community? I mean, is there stuff that goes on? Kind of explain what happens with your program. I don't expect you to do what he just did, because Terry, I'm not going to put that pressure on you, but I know you have some familiarity there.
So yeah, and we're actually almost, if we were to add the solar, which they have, if we were to go completely solar out at our prison, we would be almost 100% green prison. Because we do run off of geothermal, so does our hospital here. So that's a huge benefit. And also we're a newer prison, 15 years they've had the prison here. So we have a lot of this same similar program. We don't have the dog program, but they do a lot of landscaping work and gardening. They do a lot of using their own food, growing their own food. And
yeah, they grow their own food and stuff like that. So you're teaching them skills that they'll use when they get out. Gardening is a really great way to rehabilitate my brain.
Yeah, it's just kind of another way to live off the land, basically, and teaching them, to fish as opposed to giving them a fish. So they also, do a lot of work for our community when we have things that need to be built or made, signage, stuff like that. We contract with the prison. Several of our entities do in town, and they do the building, and we pay the prison for that work, for them to do that. So they have contracts, and they also do wildfire. They also go out with the Forest Service and help fight wildfire.
So what people are asking, what people can do at this point? Is this a done deal? I know it's probably different for both of your communities, so I'll let you both kind of address that. But what can be done? What is being done? This is allegedly, for at least Shutter Creek, you guys could be finding out as early as this legislative session. They're supposed to be talking about this starting Monday. Is that right?
Correct. They're gonna have a meeting on the 10th, and from what I understand, we should hear something by possibly Friday, the 14th or the 15th, somewhere in that area.
Somebody's saying on here real fast, Jerry, that you guys also do a lot of wildland firefighting training with your inmates, and I don't know if you guys do that in Warner Creek as well.
We do. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what can they do, Terry? Is there a move? Is there a petition? Is there something people can do? They write their legislator.
Write your legislator. I mean, the Ways and Means Committee took information, and it's going up to the legislation on the 10th. If you get a hold of the legislature, by all means, they're the ones that's going to be making this decision. And I know it's going to be a hard decision for them to make, but anybody that has any positivity about keeping us up here and in Warner Creek, they need to get a hold of the legislature, and they need to be a voice. Let them know what it's going to do to affect them. And, if they're not in our areas and they happen to live in the Salem or Portland area, look at what it's going to do to the people that are coming into them areas and bumping out other people, and try to think about what it's going to do to those families that are up there, and how it's going to affect their communities also. And the one thing I forgot to mention on here too is, we've got a community out in this place called Lakeside. It's a very, very small rural community, and we supply, the Department of Corrections actually supplies $220,000 per year to that community to help them with their wastewater plant, because we supply all our wastewater goes down to them and they process it for us. And a $220,000 hit for that small community will end them. They have no way to recover that other than charging people that are in the community an absorbent amount of money for their wastewater.
And those are the little things, both in Lakeside and in Lakeview and in Coos Bay. Those are things that we don't see right now necessarily, because all of us don't know that happens. But those, that's going to crush them. Jessica, what can people do to Lakeview? I mean, I just had a show the other day talking about, this move to make Greater Idaho, and people were going, oh, well, just they're all part of Oregon and all this. This really sounds to me like it's a chance for the more urban areas to put their money where their mouth is and go, you know what, there's not enough people in Lakeside. There's not enough people in Coos Bay. There's not enough people in Lakeview to get the power that they need unless the Valley comes and helps at some.
So the best thing to do is to write the Joint Ways and Means in terms of public safety. So you can do that. I can give you that information, Rick, also.
If you put that in the link, we're done, put it in the comment section, and then I'll just go through there. That'd be awesome, Jessica. Thank you.
And the best thing to do is when you are writing and when you're emailing these people in our legislature, you want to do real stories. You want to really, you don't want to just list facts. You don't need to know about all the jobs or about how it, you just need to tell them that, to protect their rural communities and to help protect the jobs and the families that we have here, and that the relationships that they've built. Reedsport, Roseburg, Eugene, Corvallis, anywhere, because these prisons, we're already, our prison holds just under 500 right now. So those inmates will go along with Shutter Creek to other prisons, and they will overcrowd. So it will affect the rest of the state. So if you can just try and state how you feel about this happening, it would help Shutter Creek and Warner Creek immensely.
Karina writes on here, I live in Reedsport. It's not just about the programs at Shutter Creek. It's all the other employees losing their jobs. I'm already economically depressed in the area. And I think that's what kind of is a rub too, is we're already struggling with COVID and the reaction and the effects of that economically. And and I understand the state has to balance its budget, but it just seems like, again, rural Oregon's taking the hit on this, and you don't have any hit to give anymore. And you guys, I'm going to add something to what Jessica said. When you're writing your letters, not only tell a story, and don't just bitch. And don't say mean things. Like, I mean, some of you are on here going, oh, the governor's trying to do this. That's fine. I'm sorry. I'm not making fun of you. But if you start in with that when you're writing a letter, would you listen to that? If somebody comes on my page and starts going, Rick Dancer, you're an idiot, and then starts going on to a conversation, my ears are shut. I am no longer listening. So you start and you write a letter that's factual, but emotional, that what you're thinking, but don't be mean, and don't go back and out of anger. You want to do this that's effective. Okay, I'm done with my little preaching. I'm sorry?
Get more flies with honey.
You do. So you guys, thank you so much. Is there anything else? Because I want you to have the time. And again, you guys, we are sponsored by Buck Sanitary Service. The show is called The Buck Stops Here, because Scott and Lisa and my idea here is that we really, as Oregonians, we are the people, and we do have a voice. And the buck doesn't stop with your legislature and your governor and all these people. It starts with us. And so we need to be telling them what we think. And I know it sometimes feels like nobody's listening, but we can't give up. We have to keep going on this. Jessica, any last thing you want to throw in there?
Well, I just want to thank you for letting us talk about our story, and our thoughts are with you, Shutter Creek, and your families and employees. As the governor has said, we're all in this together. So let's try to make our people everywhere in our state important, and our families and our jobs important enough to say something and try to help us.
And Terry?
I agree, and we're thinking about you guys down there too. It's a rough time, and all we have is each other right now, and hopefully that's enough. One thing I did want to add to it that I forgot about is people don't realize that with Shutter Creek, if we lose our institution, if it closes down, it goes back to the federal government because we lease it for $1 a year, and we can't get that back. Warner Creek, I believe Warner Creek was given or donated to the Department of Corrections down there from a farmer, and it will go back to that farmer, and that's not going to be coming back either. I'm sure. We're going to lose money in our schools. We're going to lose money with every business around here. The nurses are going to be gone. One thing that everybody doesn't really realize too is our inmates get excited when they can go out on off-site crews because it gets them away and gets them back into a normal life somewhat. Right. Back 2 years ago, whenever we had a big snowstorm on the Highway 38 corridor, it shut down that highway for days. 2 of our inmate crews went out there and cleaned it up so families that got stuck on the road could get out. So we do a lot of good, and I know Warner Creek does too. We've got a lot of inmates, a lot of families, a lot of workers that are going to suffer over this. And I think in the Salem area that there's a way to disperse the jobs around to save some of that money and move them into other institutions along the Salem and Portland area, because it's not really going to affect the families as much because they already live in that area. It's costing them maybe 10 to 15 more miles to drive to work. So they're not having to buy new houses. They're not having to change schools. They're not having to close down their families' businesses. They're not having to do any of that.
So Terry, I'm not trying to call you out here, but you got a little emotional when you're talking about that.
Yeah, I did. And, it's an attack, I feel, on us workers up there and at Warner Creek over money that can be made somewhere else, money that can be changed somewhere else. And I don't want to see any of our prisons closed, none of them, because the Department of Corrections is a very tight-knit family, whether it be our corrections officers or our office staff. And when it hits us at Shutter Creek, it affects us at other places. We got friends throughout the state at all institutions, and it's a big blow.
And you guys are doing
and
at both, at Warner Creek and stuff. I think what people don't understand is there's also dentists, there's counselors, there's doctors, there's all kinds of people. But you're doing really great work to rehabilitate people and bring them back into our community because you have success. So it's not like this is, I think sometimes people look at it like, oh, they're sticking them in jail, so more people in jail. This is rehabilitation. This is getting people back. And that's got to feel like kind of, I would think that feel really hard when you're proud of what you do. And here's Lakeview, Oregon, rehabilitating people to put back into the rest of the state. And that's an honor. What a great thing to be able to do. And to have people then, I think this is sometimes we're looking at it like, these people shouldn't be in jail. These people are not in jail. These people are in a minimum security prison to learn how to live again. And I think that gets forgotten by sometimes the politicians and people that are talking about this, because you guys are doing good work, and because I have too many friends that are graduates of your places, Well,
and there's a big misconception in the communities, in a lot of communities, that people have on corrections. You know, a lot of times, like when I first went into corrections 15 years ago, everybody say, "Oh, you're just a knuckle dragging guard." It's not that. We care about the success of the community, because those guys and those women that are in Coffee Creek are going to get out, and guess what? They're going to be your neighbor, and it's our job to go in there and make sure that they have the best chances when they get out to be a good neighbor to you.
All right. You get Jessica. I don't know if you guys saw there, Terry. People are going, Tom Hunt says, 2 excellent speakers. Let's give them our support. You guys, I only get the best on my show. Okay. So I have history with Jessica, so I knew her. When I got hooked up to Terry this morning, I'm going, oh God, I think I can make this work. And then I called Scott and Lisa at Buck Sanitary Service. And in a matter of an hour, we put together this, because I really believe this is how change happens, is you guys get out and speak for yourself about your community. And because that's what Jessica does. She's director of the chamber there, and she loves her town. And Terry is obviously a member, and he loves his community throughout the corrections facility. So I hope that gives people a little different picture. Thank you for taking your time, you guys. And I kept you a little longer than I wanted to, but I just like having conversations like this. And I think you guys show a really great, I'm proud to know you both. And Jessica, if I was there, I'd give you a big hug. Terry, I'd give you a handshake if I could. I don't know.
And I would take that handshake gladly, bump fist, whatever you want to do, man.
But Jessica, Jessica would give a hug.
Yeah, of course.
One last thing I'd like to say is people also need to consider that whenever the courts start opening back up and they start sending people back to prison, they need to know where they're going to send them, because with 2 prisons gone, there ain't going to be a place to put them.
Yeah. Jessica, any last words for your town?
No, we're just working hard. We're a tight-knit community, and we'll get through this one way or another. And we just really love as much support as we can get right now. All
right. Well, you got it from me, and I think a lot of other people on here too. Thank you both. And again, you guys, we want to thank, I'm going to pull you off. So you guys are done. You'll kind of hear me kind of blabbing, but I'm just going to give my sponsor another thank you and a few more instructions for people. Okay. Thanks, you guys. Terry, thanks for working this out really fast. And Jessica, you too. Yeah. You guys are studs. You're awesome.
Good talking with both of you.
All right. Now that's community. When you love to live in a place where like that happens, Jessica's out there busting butt for her town, and Terry's doing the same thing for his community of correctional officers and staff and secretaries and all that. Yeah. Oh God, it's days like this, you guys, I got to tell you, I love my life. This is what I was born to do. And when you get to do that because of people like Scott and Lisa Weld at Buck Sanitary Service, and get to educate you guys from the source, not from the media. The media has its spin. These people don't have their spin. These are real, just normal Oregonians doing their thing. And so please write your legislator. Let them know, be nice when you do it, but be firm. Firm and nice can be together. Okay. All right. I'm Rick Dancer. That's it for today. Have a great day. That's what you call positive information. All right. It's on you now. The buck stops here.